All right, welcome into the second episode of Food and Conversations, a Come to the Table podcast. It's me again, David, alongside Justine. Justine, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good. If you're here for the second pod, that's even better than you being here for the first. Really, that means you're back. So
That
welcome back.
that means you're back. That's right. And we're still figuring things out. I was trying to think of a way for us to, find something to talk about in this beginning part without just talking about the weather over and over again. We are thinking about a couple different segment ideas, so we'd love to hear what you think. I think I'm afraid about doing like Justine's hot takes. I'm afraid
Mm.
that we could get taken off the air with some great food takes that you have. So maybe like Justine's recipe corner or something
Oh, there you
potentially.
go. Yeah.
Um,
I appreciate you just saying that you wouldn't really want to expose anyone to my hot takes, which they're very mild, by the way. Mostly about
yeah,
TV and food.
yeah. I mean, no, we're not going to get crazy. I just mean, you know, you've got some passionate takes. But one thing that I think we have in common, or not necessarily you and I, but everybody who's listening to this, is a love of food and all things food systems related, but also at its core, food. And so it's getting ready to be what I would call farmers market season, if we're not already there, where, the Durham and the Carborough farmers markets, both where we are locally, have like a strawberry day, they have a tomato day, which also had me thinking before we get to our guest, what fruit or vegetable, when it is like in season perfect, ready to go, do you look forward to the most as we get into that time of year when that stuff starts coming?
Well, my answer is and always will be strawberries. I love strawberries. I
Mm,
don't eat them if they're not in season. Um, My girls were also both born in late April, right when strawberry season starts. So it just is, there's a lot of really good things about the end of April, early May. Strawberries are the best. And I cook with them like a million different ways. It's my fave.
yeah, I was gonna say, what's your do you like a strawberry rhubarb pie? Is that your go-to with strawberries in
Um,
the pot?
Shout out to Erin McDowell if you're listening.
This is great
Uh,
stuff. Yeah.
roasted strawberry pie. That
Mm,
was I have to credit her from the book on pie. Highly recommend. Roast strawberries in the oven for like 3 hours, and then you bake it again in a pie crust. It's
okay.
phenomenal.
Okay. And what that again, that shout out was what's the name of that book?
The book on pie.
The Book on Pie. All right. Hey, simple enough. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
What about you? Of
if you spent much time with me, I love peaches. I would have to go with
course.
peaches. I did work at a peach orchard when I was in college for a couple summers selling peaches, where my number one goal was when somebody came up and asked me what kind of peach it was to just come up with the craziest thing possible, because I very rarely could remember the name of like the Carolina Beauty or whatever it was that I was selling.
Hmm.
So it's peaches for me, and that's like July 4th. That's right around the time when you get the free stones around here in North Carolina and those peaches get real good. So I would have to say peaches, but blackberry's a close second. I love a
Hmm.
good blackberry. So um, let us know in the comments what your favorite fruit is when it is ripe and in season. But um, we will we'll leave it there, I think.
Yeah. I think it's
And
time to introduce our next guest on the second pod. We are welcoming Derrick Weston to the pod, and we have known him for a few years actually. Back when we did the School for Food Justice, Faith, and Storytelling, he was one of our guest presenters, and then he also comes to the conference, has done a few presentations there. So we really like him. Derrick is the jack of all trades, a writer, filmmaker, podcaster, speaker, and educator. He works with faith communities at the intersection of food, faith, and ecology, and currently serves as the Director of Theological Education and Training at Creation Justice Ministries. He lives outside of Baltimore with his wife and 4 children.
all right, we're live now with Derrick Weston. Derrick, it's great to see you on this beautiful Friday here in North Carolina. How are things going your way?
Yeah, it's actually beautiful here in Baltimore too. One of my last few Fridays in Baltimore, so gonna try and soak up a little bit of sun today.
Love that. Derrick, you've spoken at our last two Come to the Table conferences. You are a come to the table conference veteran at this point. But I was just thinking, and I was going to say this to you before we started recording, but I figured I'd wait till now. For some reason, you came in hot at the 2026 conference, like straight from another retreat. So you just stay on the move. You were, and for some reason, I thought you were in Germany, but you ended up being like in the state of Michigan for some reason. I don't know what happened, but remind me what you were doing that weekend and like.
So I was at Camp Friedenwald, and so I'm wondering if
That's what
that
it
was
was.
what confused you. Was that like you thought I was? Maybe there's a place in Germany called Friedenwald or Friedenwald. I don't know. So we were doing a leadership development program with congregations, which is kind of new for us at Creation Justice Ministries. Historically, a lot of our resource creation has gone at the denominational level, or we've had retreats for individuals. But really focusing in on work with congregations is kind of brand new for us. So we had a couple, I think it was 12 congregations who had representatives from their church. So just kind of think about climate communication and behavior change and integrating creation justice ideas into worship.
And I'm assuming Justine would echo this. No better place to do that than the state of Michigan. I was
Obviously.
like, let's just tee Justine up for a quick.
My personal goal in all of this is just to talk about Michigan as much as possible. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it was great. Like the day we got there, it was absolutely beautiful. And then the next day we had a tornado watch. So I think we got the full Michigan experience.
Yeah, absolutely. You sure did. And when you said German, I grew up very close to a town called Frankenmuth, Michigan, which is like very popular for its German food and culture. And they have a huge ice sculpture festival and all this. So I don't think that was anywhere near where you all were, but
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I think one hope we should have is that we can find like one or two super fans. I don't know, that's never going to happen, but somebody who will spreadsheet out for us like some ticks that Justine and I end up developing, talking about Michigan, whatever it might be, and then they can track for us on which episodes we ended up doing just that. So, Derrick,
Amazing.
Speaking of podcasting, you were the co-host of a very popular podcast called Food and Faith, and I'm wondering, off the jump, before we get into some stuff about you and your work, if you could tell us, like, what's one thing that we should be knowing up front that it took you a while to learn about the podcast game that we should hold on to?
Oh man, great question. There is a sweet spot of planning, because you can overplan. Like you can come in with like too many questions of like, I'm going to stick to my script and like miss a chance for like absolutely spontaneous, wonderful conversation. And you can also totally underplan. Like when you have an author on and like you just kind of skim their book and like they really like notice that you skim their book, like that can not go so well sometimes. So finding that sweet spot of planning, of like having a general outline but also leaving room for the spirit when something interesting comes up and you can just kind of veer off course. That would be maybe the little podcaster tip I would give.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes total sense. I think especially when you're watching late night TV or something like that, and one of the hosts has on somebody who's got their new 700-page tome out on, someone, and it's very clear that they have been given the high notes, and they're like, trying to do the best they can on Mark Twain or whatever it is. You're like, oh, yeah. I read your bio, and so I think that makes sense, and hopefully we'll venture to find the sweet spot of over and under planning. So I appreciate that. So Derrick, let's jump into it. I just wanted to say, as I read your bio before you came on, you're obviously a great speaker and a great writer. You're working on a food justice film series in some capacity. You've tackled food justice and creation care. And I'm wondering, kind of for you, what is the North Star for you in terms of your work? What kind of issues or virtues or passions is it that animates your work that you're always drawn to, no matter what the
Mm.
form or format is?
Yeah, great question. Um, there's a couple things. One is I'm a firm believer in community. I believe that we as a culture try to do so many things on our own that are meant to be done in community. And so figuring out who our people are, figuring out how we connect with them, not in like an exclusive way, but like in a way where we find our like-minded folks that we can work with, and figuring out how do we do more things as a community. Um, and that kind of dovetails into sort of a second thing is that I am a firm believer in the abilities and capacities of the small church. I've been a small church pastor. It's hard work, which is why I'm no longer a small church pastor. But I believe in the power of small churches so much, um, that they have their fingers on the pulses of their communities, that they have kind of an influence that, like, even for people who wouldn't necessarily call themselves religious or Christian, like, will still kind of claim an active church in their community as their church. I've seen that in so many occasions. So like there's just kind of a built-in goodwill, and it can really be the heart of a community in some ways. And then I think maybe above all of this is like I am a firm believer in story and storytelling and empowering people to tell their stories. I think one of the things that we have learned um, in some really hard ways in this country is that facts don't necessarily move people, but narratives do. Good stories can be the difference maker in terms of what direction people decide to go, what things people choose to fight for, what are the connective tissues between individuals. So I think being able to tell story, being able to empower other people's stories, being able to listen to good stories, like really is world building in some ways.
Thank you. I resonate with that so much. The what you said about facts not really moving folks, but narrative having an opportunity to do so, because it's so often that people take facts and try to co-opt them to make a narrative that works for them or works
Exactly.
against them, right? And that's where at Come to the Table, we're always sitting in the middle of that and trying to pull all those pieces apart and really help folks understand where narrative is being crafted, and
Mm.
where it's building people up and where it's harmful. So I appreciate that nuance. So you have a book coming out in the fall of 2026 called "Building a Moral Economy: Food for All." Can you tell me a little bit about the book and what problems you are addressing, or challenges, perhaps?
Yeah, and there's a good chance it's going to come out in the spring of 2027 and not
Hey,
fall 2026.
it's ready
Cause
when it's
life,
ready.
cause life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's part of a series called "Building a Moral Economy," and the architect behind it is Cynthia Molavita, who is a professor on the West Coast, part of the GTU, and she wrote a wonderful book called "Resisting Structural Evil," and so this "Building a Moral Economy" is really kind of looking at it kind of starts with the assumption, right, that like we don't have a moral economy, that the economy that we currently have exploits people, it depletes resources from the created order, it reduces the created order to resources, um, and that it's working for really well for some and not working well for others. So thinking about uh, so the series has the overall book that Cynthia wrote, building a moral economy. Then there's one on climate justice and climate hope, water for all, housing for all, um, the moral and religious underpinnings of a moral economy, and then mine is food for all. And for me, food for all, thinking about what a moral, a just food system is, this is um, really been, in some ways, it kind of feels like the culmination of the last decade of my life of kind of thinking about how do we address our food system and the ways in which it doesn't work for everyone. Um, there's some really baseline things of like, can we actually provide like the nutrition, the calories that every human being needs? But there's also for me, like I've in my writing, I've thought a lot about the Jetsons cartoon, and if anyone remembers that, the way that they ate in the Jetsons was like they got little pills, and like that was their food, and like I think for some people that is the food future that they want. That is very much not the food future that I want. Um, for me, a food future is one where we have really vibrant local food economies, and thinking about how do we rediscover our local farmer? How do we rediscover um, our local cooks and chefs? How do we um, rediscover ideas of barter and trade? How do we get off of sort of this corporate food system and have a food system that is honoring of the land, where we're actually caring for creation, that where we're honoring like the fact that there is indigenous wisdom that has been around for thousands of years, and like we've packaged it as things like permaculture, but like it's been there for a long time. um how do we have a food system that celebrates the fact that so many of our foods from our cultures come from struggle, and that is something that is worth celebrating, that we the ways in which we overcome struggle and our cuisine survive those struggles. So how do we make a more humane, not just human, but humane food system, is really some of the questions that I'm tackling in this. And I'm not an economist. One of the things that I figured out very quickly in writing this book is that I'm not an economist. I think I knew that, but like now I really know that. But I don't come at this as an economist. I come at it as a theologian, as a person who's worked in spiritual and religious communities, and feels like there are principles in our religious traditions about what a just and whole food system could look like. So it's been really fun to integrate a lot of the good writing that is out there about food with some of the thinking that I think is reflected in scripture, and some of the just innovations of what I think people are trying to do in this space. And a lot of it is recognizing that I think to move our food system forward, we actually have to look backwards and recognize that there's been a lot of wisdom in human history about how we eat well and how we feed each other well, and how we care for the land in the process.
Just a small topic there to try to tackle, nothing major.
Tiny,
And
tiny.
I'll link this in the notes. I just was saying, I didn't realize that your book was a part of a series until you just said it. The artwork on these books is incredible. I
It's so
love what
beautiful.
they. Yeah, I'm like, can I get that in a painting in my house? So we'll make sure to link that if you want to read, climate justice, home for all, water for all the ones that you mentioned. I guess one question follow up on the book that I have for you is, I think I've never written a book. I have done we write guidebooks every few years, and I wrote an undergraduate thesis that was whatever, 60 pages or whatever. So never written a book. But I find that like in those times of like nailing down on something and really focusing on something that at least I did, swung from like feeling really hope filled about what I was writing about, and also being like, this is actually kind of depressing. It sometimes in the research of it, not on like a personal level of having to sit down and type it out, but like sometimes when you go deep on all the ways in which we're currently failing to live up to, a moral economy as pertains to food. I imagine that can be kind of disheartening. So I'm curious, like, what your rhythms are like in terms of hope and despair while writing, or have you found more of one than the other during this process?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I actually kind of organized my writing. The first 4 chapters of the book are really dealing with the problem,
Mm,
and the last 5 chapters are, like, exploring some of the solutions. So I kind of, like, when I was getting too, like, mired in the problems, that I would, like, "Okay, it's time to start working on the hopeful chapters."
nice. Yeah.
And but it's anchored actually. So the middle of the book, is a chapter on gratitude, lament, awe, and holy anger. And, holding those things together in the center of the book and holding those things together in the center of myself was really important. That like, because the fact of the matter is, in my own life, in my own world, I oftentimes have to hold my gratitude and my lament at the same time and like balance the way that I'm holding them. And um so never letting myself go too far down one road, um before, particularly with lament, like never letting myself go down the road of lament too far before going back to things like awe and gratitude. um so having a book that felt balanced in that way, also kind of helped me feel balanced in the writing of it. Because yeah, it can get really depressing. It can be really depressing when you think about, um, you know, the giant agricultural companies that are global in scope, that seem to just kind of operate with impunity. Um, that can be really depressing. But then you look at like the small, um, community gardeners who have endeavored to feed their neighborhood, and provide fresh and healthy produce, um, like block by block, and you're like, okay, and there's hope, and there's something to be grateful for. So yeah, yeah, holding those things in balance is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something that we endeavor to balance as well in a lot of our work. So I appreciate you on that journey. I actually another last kind of follow up question on your book is the that you came out with previously, the Just Kitchen. I'm just curious how this kind of new iteration, this new book differs from or talks to your previous work and how you kind of balance some of your previous research and storytelling and story
Mm.
hearing that you did and kind of how that has fed into or differed, how you've differed from that journey.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big differences is that I had a brilliant co-author for the first book, and now I'm just kind of out on an island, and the imposter syndrome is real. Um, so there's there's that piece of it. But one of the things that I think is actually, um, I think the Just Kitchen really set me up for thinking about these larger food
Mm.
system questions, because it really was like, how is the larger food system reflected in what happens in the family kitchen, or what happens even in a communal kitchen. um, and there's still part of me, I mean, one of the things that, as I was writing and as I was researching, um, I was surprised by how much of the literature about reforming the food system honestly comes back to cooking. And that like a just food system is probably going to be one where people are doing more cooking, one where people know how to cook, one where people have more comfort with the kitchen and are willing to spend more time in the kitchen. So there are a lot of thoughts from the first book, that bleed over into this book. Um, and it really just kind of is taking some of the concepts that we're in the, again, kind of like in this really intimate space and kind of blowing them up to think about systems.
That's a very good point. I mean, it kind of ties back to what you mentioned about the Jetsons and folks just kind of taking a pill to eat. Because there are lots of people who still like offered that and said, yeah, absolutely, I'll just do that
Mhm.
instead. And so there is a huge piece of this work. You cannot put individual pieces of the food system in a vacuum, and it's
Yeah.
all connected. Um, so I appreciate that. So, switching gears a little bit, in your work with Creation Justice Ministries, you serve as the Director of Theological Education and Formation. What projects or ideas have you worked on that change how you think about creation and climate justice?
Yeah. Um, Boy, there's a lot of ways I could take that. Um, One of the things that we did over the last year was a program called Thriving Earth, that was funded through the American Geophysicists Union. Um, which sidebar, the last 2 years, 2025 and 2024, I got to go to the American Geophysicists Union's annual gathering, so like me and like 30,000 climate scientists. And like I have never, like, that is the space where I have felt the least socially awkward of my entire life. It's absolutely amazing. Um, but what the project we were doing with Thriving Earth was utilizing the skills of local congregations to be community science hubs, and empowering congregations to think about how do you tackle the environmental justice issues that are happening in your community. That was such a huge paradigm shift for me, because I think so often when we talk about creation justice, we are talking about the pristine areas of the world. We're talking about the forest, the old growth forests, and we're talking about the mountains. We're talking about the oceans. It's like, let's focus in on the elements of creation that exist in our urban areas, that exist in urban spaces. Like, that creation justice is about things like clean water, and about things like um, breathable air in urban areas that might be congested with fumes from cars and trucks. Um, one of the projects was about asbestos and lead poisoning. A couple of them were urban garden situations. So really kind of expanding the scope of what creation justice is, to think that like um, humans were created on the sixth day of creation. So um, creation isn't complete in those spaces that are just void of humans. Like we don't get to just say, well, the untouched creation is the ideal. It's humans figuring out how we live harmoniously in our environments. Like, that is the creation ideal. And so being able to explore that, and being able to do that in the context of small urban congregations, was really a pretty significant shift in my own thinking about what creation justice is.
Yeah, I find that so interesting that, especially thinking back to my time in seminary, um, conversations around what we call creation care, climate justice, a lot of times, is not always place based, and that to me is the easiest way to connect with, I would imagine, local congregations on issues like
Mhm.
this. Is like we all have a place. We all can imagine, we all have homes, right? We all have areas that we love and are affected by a variety of different issues. But for some reason, I think you touch on this a little bit at the front. Sometimes when you think about those topics, people think of the big things. They think of the oceans, or they think of the
Mhm.
ozone, or whatever. All those things are legit, but it's
Yeah.
also like your backyard, you know? So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I appreciate you touching on that, and and your work there at Creation Justice Ministries. I think one of the things that I'm most drawn to, in this world are things around art and how art
Mm.
intersects with a variety of different issues. And one thing that I did not know about you is that you have a degree in film studies, and you obviously have produced and hosted podcasts, and you've got a book already out and have another book coming. And I guess I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the ways in which you have explored art's connections with either the food system or climate or whatever it might be. Like you said, like it's different than facts and figures. There's a way that art
Mm.
has the ability to express those things in a different way. So this is probably my first really bad question that I've asked so far on the podcast, of just like, really, there are more to come, because it's like I've asked you 5 questions within, but the connections between, art and your work, I'm just would love to hear more. So
I've heard worse. Um, um, so part of it is like I said, I believe really strongly in storytelling, and good art, I think, is good storytelling. I think one of the things that I love about art, and I'm growing to appreciate about art, is the ways in which it can help us imagine better futures. And I think that's really what we need right now in the climate conversation. We have a really good image of the dystopian future that could happen. Like, we have made film after film about that. We have made uh, YA fiction about that. We have made regular fiction about that. We got dystopia down. What we don't have down, I think, is the hopeful climate future. Um, we did a we did a program with an organization called Grist, where we invited folks who were doing one of our cohorts to um, imagine climate futures. And it was such a hopeful gathering. It was so beautiful and imaginative. Um, it was just a liberating conversation for people to think about, you know, um, um, to think about, sorry, I'm gonna do something that, is silly for a podcast, but, like, think about Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson's book and the title, like, "What If We Get It Right?" Like, I love the book, but, like, the title, more than anything, is just so inspiring to me. Like, what if we actually started to approach this as a thing we could get right? So I have been recently, like, I'm just beginning to, like, dip my toes into solar punk as, like, an aesthetic. And, like, I'm reading this book called the Psalm for the Wild Built. And for those of you who don't know, the idea of solar punk is kind of this idea of sort of a future in which it's not void of technology, but technology is working in harmony with creation. And, like, there's this whole genre that is emerging, this solar punk genre that is emerging, of thinking about a future that is not a technocratic future, but one in which technology and creation are in some ways fueling each other. And so I am absolutely captivated. And if you just, like, do a quick Google search of solar punk, you will be um, bombarded with these beautiful images of, again, not a world that is devoid of humans, but a world where humans have figured out what our balance with creation looks like, and our technology has developed around that. So I think art's really good at um, projecting us into that future. Again, I think there's been so much fiction in particular about, us blacking out the sun and the ice caps melting and our cities being decimated. Like we got that. We got that. Like, let's start imagining a future. Let's start creating images and words and poetry and music about the future that still includes humans, but figuring out what our relationship with creation looks like.
That is amazing. And it is a privilege to be in this place because this is the second time that we've been talking about solar punk in 3 days. I love that. David and I were
Amazing.
literally meeting with a pastor a few days ago, and he mentioned solar punk and the book you mentioned that I already forgot. Say it again, please, because
The Psalm for the Wild Bill.
yeah. So I obviously have to add that to my list because
Yeah.
that's the second time it's been brought up in 3 days. So first of all, thank you for that.
What's funny is that someone at the Come to the Table conference was like, "Hey, have you read Psalm for the Wild Bill?" And I'm
It
I
like,
mean,
could have been the
okay.
same
"No."
person who told us. Yeah, it might have been.
Like the odds are pretty good, but I was like, no, but someone's mentioned that book to me before, and so then I
Okay.
immediately purchased it, and started reading it. I was like, oh, this is amazing.
All right.
This
This
is
is
the
how
kind
the
of stuff I
gospel
want to be
first
reading.
started getting spread, have you heard? So
Yes.
here we
Yeah.
go.
I just want to say one thing, and then Justine, I'm sorry. So
You're good.
I found it interesting. Like, what if we get it right? I was just thinking about the movie that has made the most money at the box office this year is Project Hail Mary, which is really a book and a movie
Mm.
about what if we got it right after we got it wrong, right? Like we've bypassed the idea of talking about what if we got it right, and we've moved on to, okay, if they get it wrong, the sun is going to be blotted out, and then it's like, what if we get it right with another species? That is the plot of that book and movie. Spoiler alert. So anyway,
Well,
just fascinating
well,
that you bring that up.
and like I think of like probably my favorite Pixar movie is Wall-E,
Of
which is
course.
what if we get it right after we get it wrong?
Yeah. A new
Like
evolution. Yeah.
we're real like we really like do not want to skip the we're gonna get it wrong part.
Yeah, it's great. Well, this is an ad hoc question.
Mm.
But we have been talking about story a lot, and it's a big part of our work as well. So as you spend a lot of time with clergy and lay leaders and people, scientists, everyone, what's a question that you like to ask that
Mm.
helps people tell their story? That kind of disarms them in a way that makes them feel, safe to share. Give us a
Yeah.
good prompt.
I mean, I'm going to steal this directly from the Food and Faith podcast. We always concluded that podcast with the question of what gives you hope. And people, um, man, people take that question in a lot of different directions, and I think it's maybe when Anna and Sam, who started the podcast, maybe when they first started asking that question, I don't know if they imagined how vulnerable people can get when they answer that question. Because a lot of times it's sometimes it's a big systemic answer. Sometimes it's a hope about you know legislation. It's a hope about mass movements, but sometimes it really does come down to things like my kids. It really does come down to things like um, I planted a seed, and that's the thing that gives me hope is that like people are still planting seeds, right? Um, so I think that is kind of always a question that whether I ask it directly or I ask it indirectly, um, I don't know. Like I am really in this space right now of not just inviting myself to imagine the future, but inviting other people to imagine the future. And that hope question, I think, is one that um, inspires imagination because I think hope is in some ways an exercise of imagination. So that's one that I will probably always come back to is asking people what gives them hope.
Yeah, it's a good one. Well, if I'm allowed to flip the script and ask that of you, can I?
Damn it.
Yep. I know that was kind of a cheap shot, but I think
It's fine. It's
good
fine. It's fine. It's
it's a
fine. It's
good tone to
fine.
end on. And
I'll
it,
I'll I'll do it.
thanks. And I mean, I'm gonna ask David to answer that too.
Oh, there you
What
go.
me?
And
What
I'll
me?
answer it as well.
At least you got
Yeah.
some warning. I will be honest. Like I so I mentioned before that I was a small church pastor for a little bit. And during my time, my very short tenure as a small church pastor, um, I felt like part of why ministry was hard for me was I was seeing so much of the decline of the church, the decline in numbers, the decline in influence, decline of resources, and it really was depressing. It was like to be a pastor in a time when you're going to be doing way more funerals than baptisms and marriages is hard for a lot of folks, and it was hard for me. The work that I do now, I feel like I get to see so much of the like innovative people trying to get unstuck. And like and this is a time in our history where like the overwhelm could just like make you throw up your hands and say we lost, and I'm not going to do anything. There's nothing we can do. And instead what has happened is people saying, okay, I see people more galvanized. I see people more energized. I see people more motivated to work on solutions for problems, even if they are like very hyper local problems. Like I see people are more, the resilience of people in this difficult time gives me so much hope that people are not just kind of like folding up their tents and saying, well, we tried and we failed. They're saying no, there's gotta be a way forward.
Yeah.
So what gives me hope is the resilience of green team leaders, the resilience of community gardeners and community farmers, the resilience of pastors who are um preaching in new ways and maybe willing to stick their necks out and say some things that maybe they wouldn't have said 5 years ago. Um, I'm just seeing a lot of resilience pop up in a lot of different spaces, with people who are saying that this world is worth fighting for. Um, and that gives me a ton of hope. Um, Ironically, weirdly, this is one of the more hopeful periods of my life. And that feels weird to say. That feels super strange to say. It sounds like the words of a person who's not paying attention. But like I'm very much paying attention, and yet I'm also paying attention to how people are responding, and that gives me hope.
Thank you.
So I do have to say something. That is the rules.
You don't have to say. I just felt like
Um,
we've been asking Derrick questions all morning.
yeah. Well, you know how Derrick said that you could take this a lot of different ways. Well, I will take it a different way. And this might sound cheesy, but we had bluebirds have babies in our you know, I was gonna say nest. They had it in a nest in our birdhouse outside, and the getting to watch the parents come back and forth with the food for 2 weeks, the love, the care, the attention, the energy, just like I don't know. Me and Haley, my wife, were both just like I think uh, inspired by all of that and
Mm,
what that just if you could take just a little kernel of that into your life, then we'd all be better people. If we all
yeah.
watched that for 10 minutes a day, we'd probably be better to our neighbors and our friends and our family. So, all right, Justine, what's giving you hope? I
You
have to
took
shoot.
my bird story.
Nah, yes.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
David
here
win.
for.
Yeah, we had cardinals outside of our my girls' room, like bedroom window, and so they got to watch the same thing happen outside of their window. But overall, what gives me hope is watching my girls show hospitality to whoever and whatever is in our space, and they're so eager to have people and creatures, not inside the house, but like on our property. And they're just so happy when they see animals making a home near us. So what gives me hope is that. And there's a book that we read called Home Builders. It's just basic, but it is like watching how other animals make homes in different spaces. I think helps them see that it's a place that we're all just trying to find home and create it. So yeah.
So I just want to jump in on bird stories because for my birthday I got a bird feeder that has a Bluetooth camera built into it, and
Nice.
so like basically the only notifications I get now on my phone are when there are birds at the bird feeder, and like productivity has gone way down since I put this bird feeder up.
You've
So
heard
in
of
the
Brick.
best possible way.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are two options for you out there: a brick that will dumb down your phone and only giving yourself bird notifications, in which case productivity goes down, but bird watching goes up. So
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll take it.
all right, well, Derrick, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of this conversation. Check out Derrick's work with Creation Justice Ministries. We'll make sure to have the link down below. Also, be sure to be on the lookout for his book, Building a Moral Economy, Food for All, which sounds like maybe we'll hope for spring of 2027. And we'll be sure at Come to the Table, we will be sharing out all of the resources as they become available. So, Derrick, we're looking forward to reading it. Thanks for joining us on this podcast, and can't wait to continue doing work together with you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun.
Great. Thank you, Derrick. We're so glad that he joined us. It was such a great conversation. Something I'm going to be thinking about for a bit. This concludes our second podcast, Food and Conversations. Thank you all for joining us. And we would love some recommendations. We've got a list. We've got some friends we want to interview and have on the pod. But if you have any recommendations, please share them with us.
Let us know who you want to hear from. Just people who are good hangs. I was thinking that's the name of Amy Poehler's podcast, is Good Hang with Amy Poehler. That's what we're trying to do. Derrick was great to hang out with. Love catching up with him, hearing about what's going on in CGM and his book. Make sure to Google him, check out what they're doing there, and also stay tuned for his book that's coming soon in that series. So I think that does it for another episode of Food and Conversations. We'll see you next time.
Bye.